word and image and carrot cake. That was my father's favorite, carrot cake, so I had to make it or something. The first thing, I'm going to read two pieces tonight, and the first one has to do with when I took that picture. That was taken 3 weeks before my father passed away. And I'm going to show you a different picture, and if you can't see it, we will have a couple other copies that you can look at. This is called Just Skin and Bone. Dear Diary, I photographed my father while he was sleeping. It wasn't hard to do, as he sleeps almost all the time now. I've instinctively taken to watching for his breath, fully aware that he could take off at any time now. That's how he referenced it one day, death. After a coughing fit, commenting on his obvious frailty, he kind of chuckled as he caught his breath, rasping, "Yeah, you know, you're going to say, here I was, just talking to him 1 minute. The next thing you know, he just took off." You hear the phrase, "nothing but skin and bone," so often in reference to skinny people. As my father became increasingly emaciated, it had seemed to be the most accurate way to describe him too. But seeing him now, somehow even more thin than he was only 9 days ago, made me realize that this is skin and bone. What was before thinness, wasting, shrinking, only hinted at this, the truly skeletal stage. It took my breath away. I'm not sure why I took the pictures. Most likely I took them because I knew no words could ever really translate this for anyone. Or maybe I simply took them because I could. He's alive right now. I won't be seeing him much longer. Legs sprawled on a bed and rumpled pajamas don't tell the full story. No point of reference, no sense of scale. I reached out to place my hand on his calf. See, this is how much my hand can engulf his leg now. I knew he would not hear the click of the shutter. He didn't stir. When I see that picture now, I have to keep looking at my actual wrist to remind myself of just how small it really is. In the picture, it looks so thick against his leg. My hand looks huge, fleshy, veiny, old. Oh, I know what you're thinking. My days as a potential hand model are now over. I thought to myself, crossing off one more line in my imaginary could have been list. Not that hand model was ever a serious consideration, or that such a list ever existed. It's just that it's so clear to me in this picture that if it ever had been open, that window of opportunity has now definitively closed. I regard my father's femur. I'm a thick-legged woman, Diary. I get that from my father, just as I have gotten so many things: the color of my eyes, the shape of my nose, the curve of my cheekbones, the width of my feet. I used to wonder what it would be like to be one of those long-legged gazelle types. It wasn't that I ever envied those ladies, I just kind of marveled at their limbs. I really wondered what walking around on long, slender legs must feel like. But now, watching my features and attributes grow increasingly gaunt in the form of my father, all interest in my dimensions has just fallen away. It isn't that I've stopped caring about myself, it's just that I've grown to appreciate my body in ways that I wasn't conscious of before. Truth is, I was built for service, not for the runway. I appreciate my sturdiness, the wide platform of my feet, the now sagging breasts which never did suckle a child, belying my maternal nature, the way my body has always done just what I've asked of it, how it has learned to leverage itself to be stronger than someone of my stature that they've generally been expected to be, the way it has resisted illness and has allowed me to be up when those that I care about have been down. And I appreciate the telltale signs of my own aging, the crepiness of my skin as revealed in certain lights, the subtle changes in the elasticity of my flesh, the prominence of the veins in my hands, captured here, now resting on my father's leg. This next piece was written after my father passed away, and we were going back and forth between his house in Gary, where I grew up, and my own house to get my childhood home ready to sell. This is called The Blossom Plucker. If there were one bird to be sent down to help me through this first spring after my father's death, the Baltimore Oriole would have been it. Thus, I was forced to take particular notice of its arrival. The Oriole family had been camped outside of my kitchen window for days. My husband and I had been slicing oranges for them since we first spotted the male in the trees. Quickly, they became so bold and voracious in their appetites that no manner of splashing and banging as I washed my dishes seemed to disturb them in the least. If it were not for a pane of glass between us, I could easily have reached out over my sink and touched them. All through my childhood, I remember spring after spring watching with my father for the elusive oriole to appear in our yard. Some years it did, some years it did not. It was always a thrill to spot. Deep tangerine orange, offset by bold black markings, I can still remember specific sightings of the bird, even 40 years later. One particular sighting has never left my mind. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Another love I shared with my father was of his flowering almond. Its mass of endlessly petaled, pale pink blooms always transported my imagination to Japan, where I imagined the landscape festooned with such flowers, along with cherry and peach blossoms. In an industrial Midwestern town in the 1970s, Gary, Indiana, you didn't often see much that spoke of the mystic or exotic, which is why I believe my father's yard captivated all the children in the neighborhood. He had statues of Confucius and foo dogs and this impish figure he called Puck and the laughing Buddha who now graces my yard. On this particular spring day, the almond was in full bloom. And as we looked from the large bay window over the yard, we were delighted to see an oriole land right on top of it. It was like magic, seeing them both together, these favorite blooms in this rare and brilliant bird. And as we watched, transfixed, that bird proceeded to pluck a bloom. Then another, and another. And that bird stayed there for what seemed to be most of the afternoon, pulling and plucking until every single blossom, which had previously enveloped all the branches of the bush, was gone. This was my first lesson in non-attachment. I could feel the alternating dismay and bewildered resignation finally give way to humor in both my father and myself as we watched one thing dearly loved destroy another equally loved. What else could we do? Scare away the bird we so rarely saw but always searched for? All we could do was appreciate them both while they were there, the bird and the flowers. When he was done, the oriole left and they were both gone. His very act of destruction made that year's blooms the ones I remember most clearly now, along with his plumage, making this scene one of the most vivid and colorful of my childhood memories. All through my adulthood, I have kept up the practice of looking for those birds. Some years I see them, some years I don't. This first season following his death, the orioles frequented both my father's yard as well as my own. Both places we fed them oranges. Both places they stayed for many days in a row, feasting. Well into the second week of their visit, I heard a little plink, plink, blink, 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 on my kitchen window. I looked out to see the male standing on the deck railing looking at me, wondering after his breakfast. I cut him half an orange, contemplating his actions, while I ate the other half. I was going to put out a clementine also, but I hesitated, as he had gone through so much of our fruit already. Suddenly, I felt the need to ration my supplies. Already, I was starting to take him for granted and was determining just how generous I was going to be with him. After all, citrus fruit was not cheap to come by anymore in this economy, and with the weather having done its share of damage. Humans are funny that way, always measuring one thing against another, trying to determine what is fair and what losses are acceptable stacked against what we hope to gain. Where is that line we draw that separates the special from the mundane? I doubt there is a married person alive who hasn't wondered at exactly when they stepped over that line or how close they might be to doing so now. I did put the clementine out eventually when I got nervous after the oriole flew off and didn't immediately return. I checked the window all afternoon as the line from the Paul Simon song repeated in my head, nervous when you're holding it, nervous when it's gone. The oriole did not return that day, nor did I see him the next. And even though there was evidence that something was nibbling at the oranges, I never saw him again that entire season. Another spring is upon us. My own almond, once again, is in full bloom. Orange slices have been hung outside my window and are now desiccating, untouched, in the April sunlight. As I scan the trees for a flicker of a tangerine wing, I am left alone to ponder. What is more valuable, the blossom or the bird? The bird or the fruit? The fruit or the coin? Oh, how we always weigh and cast our votes according to our whims and how satiated we feel in the moment. And oh, how quickly those moments change. Still no sign of the bird. I turn from my vigil at the window. It's a mystery to me how any of us ever survives our paradoxes. Springtime has become for me as full of absence as it is of bloom, as bound to death as it is to new life. Mushrooms sprout from a fallen limb of the massive oak. Ferns unfurl among last autumn's withered leaves. Everywhere around me, beauty consumes beauty, while resurrections emerge from every tomb. I have always loved the way the seasons mark the passage of time. Perhaps it has been time itself that I have loved. I linger. I always seem to want just a few more moments for hugs that last a little longer, for spaces to extend themselves just a bit wider between the notes of a song or the lines of a poem, so that I might absorb them, for time to draw in a few more breaths of perfumed evening breeze before I return indoors. And yet with time comes decay. Time marks absence as much as it does arrival. They have become inseparable for me. I have been with several lifeless bodies now, some in their virgin state, some altered by the embalmer's hand. I know full well how quickly time transforms a body once life has left it. I have smelled it. I have seen it. I have touched it. Those hours of transformation are no different on the clock than the hours spent together in life, and yet it seems we recede so very quickly in the end. It's as though we are sandcastles just beyond the tide line, standing solidly all day long under the bright sun, only to dissolve into nothingness in the blink of an eye when the evening comes and the moon has her way with the tides. So, do we love time, or do we protect ourselves from it? 6 hours spent together are 6 hours gone. The beginning is the end. The circle comes full round. A bird alights on a branch, and in the flash of a thought disappears while we search for the courage to bear watching as the last blossom is plucked. Grateful we were able to be there at all. Thank you.